Well, we finally got the new playtest announcement, and it is going to be about a new book coming out called War of the Immortals. Now, in truth, we actually didn't hear that much about the playtest itself, although it is coming out tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific. So, that, like for me, I'm in Central. That'll be noon. East Coast will be 1, and Mountain will be 11. But those are the things that we have to look forward to starting tomorrow. But let's talk a little bit about what we saw today during this presentation. My name is Don, and I'm trying to be the Sly Strategist, and let's go ahead and get into it. Now, this presentation lasted about an hour, so I'm going to try to condense it a little bit. Once again, I fully suggest you watch it yourself and go ahead and go to Twitch TV/Paizo and check it for yourself. But I'm just going to try and summarize what they gave to us. So I'm going to be looking at my notes over here on the side screen a little bit. So try not to pay too much attention to that. But I'm going to be going ahead and popping up various feats and the things that they showed during the presentation. So go ahead and keep an eye out for that. So we're going to go ahead and start. So Michael Sayre and James Case were presenting. Once again, the new book coming out is called War of the Immortals, and 2 new classes are coming out with that, as well as a lot of archetypes that are related to these. If you want to get involved in this war with divine beings, and there are capstone feats that are available basically throughout any of these that can make your characters immortal in various forms. The only thing we really got about this book was that the opening of the book is going to be the death of one of the core 20 deities. They really didn't get into it. So I guess we'll have to wait. But the 2 new classes that were introduced were the Animus and the Exemplar. Now, James Case is going to be doing the Exemplar, but we're going to go ahead and start with the Animus with Michael Sayre. So they do have an iconic. The iconic is Samo. She is a Nephilim. She grew up in the northernmost part of the inner sea. She has no irises or pupils, and she has extraplanar heritage. Now, she was born a Nephilim as opposed to have it being introduced to her while she was alive, and it gave her the ability to see spirits and other entities. She was selected at Sayre's home, training in the arts of the Animus after a Kushtakan incursion, and she is named a sage after she successfully bonded with her grandmother's spirit, the custodian of groves and gardens. And if you look at her icon here, you can see that elk that's in the background is the apparition. Now, this is a full casting class. It is a wisdom-based class, also divine. It has interesting and unique spell progressions, and they wanted to do this to tell interesting stories. And how this basically works is you can bond with apparitions. Once again, it is a wisdom-based divine caster, primal, and healing. And they basically have focus spells that give you a big injection of themed mechanics. Now, a little bit of background on this. There have been classes that have had spiritual elements, but they don't quite tell the story as well as an Animist can. And going back, there was a class called a Binder. It could bind with vestiges, but it was very limited. In first edition, they had a medium, and the medium allowed you to make pact with spirits, but it did not do exactly what they wanted to do. You could kind of do everything right and pick the right spirit and pick the right thing and still not have it work out very well. And it was a lot of guesswork. And even if you managed to pick the right spirit for the right time, it wouldn't necessarily always work out to your favor. So they learned from them on how to make a class that is always going to be good at a particular role, but also have a lot of flexibility to add to what the party needs. So they created the apparitions, which was the first building block of the vessel spells. They supplement your main magic and they lend you their magic. These apparitions, they lend magic. And they have their own set of spells 1st through 9th level. So basically, you have your own pool of slotted spells, but you also have another pool that you can have up to 2 from the start. One is going to be your main apparition, and another is going to be a secondary. And as you go up in levels, you can gain other apparitions. There's a huge degree of flexibility, and it's very different from anything else in the game so far. Then we'll go ahead and talk about how an Animus works in practice and how you want to play it in combat. So you can choose new apparitions. You can have like one that follows you throughout your days, and that would basically be the Sage Animus practice dedicated to one apparition or spirit. Now, it makes it difficult for other apparitions to possess you, but you can invite your apparition into your body and have them physically take over your body. If you are a caster and your apparition is a melee fighter, well, then they can take over your body and perform better melee than you ever could. You can get feats that are tied to your apparitions, and it's basically like having a spiritual partner. While you are possessed, it is difficult for others to use control spells on you because you are already being controlled. On the other side, from a sage is a channeler. So that is more if you don't want to be bonded to one spirit. You can use many different apparitions, and there are unique actions, and a very unique action called an apparition's whirl, where you can change which of your apparitions are your primary round by round. And it's a very fluid type of character. So if you have a melee apparition and a healer apparition, you could go ahead and switch round by round. So a sage is dedicated to one entity, and a channeler make as many spirit friends as they can. Now, as you level up, you gain new feats. You can work on new ways to channel different actions and things to do. However, they did say not all playtest feats will make it to production. One of the ones they talked about specifically was one called Wind Beneath Your Wings, where basically the apparition can literally help you fly, and they aren't too sure how well that's going to actually make it past the playtest. Then we talked about a couple specific apparitions. The one that Samo has, which is the Custodian of Graves and Gardens. It does get you a few different things. You would get farming lore and herbalism lore. Some of the spells you get, a cantrip would be Tanglevine. First level is Wall of Shrubs. Second level, Gentle Breeze. Third, Safe Passage. Fourth, Life Draining Roots. Fifth, Entwined Roots. Sixth, Field of Life. Seventh, Dancing Fountain. Eighth, Moment of Renewal. And ninth, Overwhelming Presence. You also get a vessel spell that is called Garden of Healing, which we're going to cover here in a second. That's on the screen as well. But kind of like a cleric can somehow become an avatar for their particular deity, well, every one of your apparitions can have its own unique avatar. And this avatar is called an Elysian Field, and basically has a speed 60 feet. You can ignore difficult terrain and greater difficult terrain. In melee, you can use Garden's Cradle, which is an agile, non-lethal, reach 10 feet and trip, and it does 66 plus 6 bludgeoning plus grab. Ranged, it has Imposed Peace, which is non-lethal, range 120 feet, and damage once again is 66 plus 6 mental. Now, the vessel spell that you can use, Garden of Healing, uncommon, Animist, aura, healing, and vitality traits, and a 10-foot emanation, and you can sustain all of these for up to a minute as far as the Animus goes. But you basically have spirits of comfort and respite that swirl around you, and you have visions of growing grass and blooming blossoms. What you can do is, when you cast the spell in every other round that you sustain, you can do a 1d4 healing wave of hit points around you in that 10-foot emanation, and it can be heightened as well. Another one that they mentioned was Imposter in Hidden Places. And this is kind of someone who is kind of keyed in on dark places and sneaky things and making things uncomfortable. With this, you're going to get fortune telling lore and underworld lore. Your apparition spells, cantrip is Telekinetic Hand. First is Ill Omen. Second, Invisibility. Third, Veil of Privacy. Fourth is Liminal Doorway. Fifth is Hallucination. Sixth is Mislead. Seventh is Planar Palace. Eighth is Disappearance. And 9 is Phantasmagora. Your vessel spell is, this one here is listed Earth's Bile, but then they have a different one. And then you have your avatar for this particular one is Whisper Hiding in Shadows, a speed 50, a fly speed of 50 feet. Melee is a Touch of Lost Futures, which is a versatile cold damage, which says 6d10 plus 6 void damage. Range damage is Whisper of Despair, which is a range of 120 feet. And the damage is 66 plus 6 void. The one they talked about with this, although it wasn't necessarily the vessel spell, was Discomforting Whispers, which is a single action focus spell and is in 5-foot emanation, and you can sustain it up to a minute, just like you can with all these vessel spells. But you basically are surrounded with an aura of spiteful murmurings that incite bad luck and punish failure. So basically what happens is each creature that starts its turn within that area must roll twice on their first attack roll and take the lower result. And if it leads to a failure, then the creature that rolled the failed attack takes 1d6 void damage, and this can be heightened as well. Another one that was brought up was Witness to Ancient Battles. This is more if you want that melee type apparition, and you will get Battlegrounds lore and Heraldry lore. Apparition spells, cantrip is Shield. First is Runic Weapon. Second is Enlarge. Third is Ghostly Weapon. Fourth is Weapon Storm. Fifth is Invoke Spirits. Sixth is Phantasmal Calamity. Seventh is True Target. Eighth is Canticle of Everlasting Grief, and ninth is Foresight. Its vessel spell is Embodiment of Battle. Avatar is the General of Endless Battle. This is when the avatar for this particular apparition, and they have a speed of 70 feet, immune to being immobilized, melee, final strike, it's agile, fatal D12, which is a big die for fatal, reach 15 feet, damage 68 plus 6 slashing, and the vessel spell, Embodiment of Battle, once again, sustain it for up to a minute. It guides your attacks and imparts its skill to your movements. For the duration, your proficiency with martial weapons is equal to your proficiency with simple weapons, +1 status bonus to attack and damage rolls made with weapons or unarmed attacks. You gain Reactive Strike, which is attack of opportunity. And you gain critical specialization effect for any weapon you are wielding when you cast or sustain the spell. Now, because you have the instincts of this apparition of battle, they run contrary to your use of magic. For the duration of the spell, you'll take a -2 status penalty to your spell attack modifier and your spell's DC. It can be heightened to 4th and 6th. Another one they talked about was Steward of Stone and Fire. It's a blaster kind of type thing where you can unleash volcanoes and fire. You will gain mountain lore and volcano lore. And here's where that other vessel spell came in, which was Earth's Bile. 10-foot burst, constantly causing explosions, and 1 action to sustain it for up to a minute. And this particular one had an avatar called Blood of Planets, which we didn't really get too far into. And then we move on to James Case and the Exemplar. Now, the Exemplar is the rare class. The reason it had not existed before was simply because there wasn't a war with deities. There wasn't a war with the Immortals. So it's come to being because of the events of this book. It changed the way some things work, and it is basically where these heroes or these adventurers are seizing a bit of the divine. They have a spark that gives them that part of the divine, and you can think of it in likes of some demigods and things like that, although they said it's not quite a demigod, so it's not quite that, but Hercules or Maui, and they brought some other ones. The iconic is Nahoa, who was a farmer from the ocean between Tianjia and Arcadia, kind of like the Olahana area. Grew up on a rainy island, had a bunch of younger sisters, and was a bit of a jock. The land came to be attacked by a demon just occasionally, like it would consistent attacks by this demon. And Nahoa and this demon both wounded each other greatly, and he claimed a bit of the demon's power. He is a Nephilim by way of having a part of another creature inside him from another plane. So the god stuff kind of fell on him. And it's very Pacific Islander type themed, and it will, even things like the light armor they use, it will probably, even though it might appear more islandy, it'll probably use like a leaf weave type armor, also light armor. For both of these characters, the characters were designed by Wayne Reynolds. You can use really high quality weapons and armor, but it is also the type of class where you can just be a kid in a normal toga with a spear, just as good with simple weapons as they are with heavier or martial weapons. So once again, the spark of divine power is the thing, and they can use it to be very powerful and to focus it through icons. And every exemplar is going to have 3 icons. One on their body, one is something they wear, and one is on their weapon. And these must be invested. They all have Eminence, which is kind of like a constant effect, and a Transcend, which is an action they can do in order for it to perform an action. So let's go ahead and cover a few that they went over. Let's talk about the Skin Hard as Horn. It is a body icon, and tempered in your spirit, your very skin is as a suit of armor. Though a single location on your body remains unprotected, a curse and a challenge within your legend. So you have that Achilles heel, literally. So you gain resistance to bludgeoning, slashing, or piercing damage equal to half your level. You make this choice when you gain the icon, and it can't be changed thereafter. It doesn't apply against critical hits, which successfully will find that weak spot that you have. And then that's your Eminence. Your Transcend is Crash Against Me, and your skin becomes virtually unbreakable until the beginning of your next turn. So you can spend 1 action in order to do this. And your resistance increases to a value equal to your level. And during this time, if a creature fails a melee attack against you, using a weapon dealing the same damage type as your resistance, or if they succeed an attack against you with a weapon, but your resistance would be enough to reduce the damage to 0, that weapon clangs wildly off your skin with a painful reverberation, making the attacking enemy off guard, flat-footed pre-remaster, and applying a -2 circumstance penalty to attacks with that weapon until the beginning of their next turn. The weapon icon is a noble branch. Any weapon in the spear or polearm weapon group, or staff, bow staff, so on and so forth. Its imminence is your weapon icon deals 2 additional spirit damage per weapon damage die to creatures it strikes, and its transcend is strike, breathe, and rend, which has the spirit trait. Single action requirement, your last action this turn was a successful strike with a noble branch. And the effect, you channel a pulse of energy down your weapon at the moment of impact, and the target of the required strike takes spirit damage equal to your weapon's damage dice. Your one icon, this one here, is a Victor's Wreath, and you wear headwear or worn it as a sash, and it's a symbol of victory. The imminence is Aura Emotion Mental. You inspire allies to greater glory. You and all allies within 15 feet gain a +1 status bonus to attack rolls, so it could be like a bard or like the Inspiring Martial Stance. And the Transcend, 1 moment till glory, single action, emotion, mental, spirit, and you rally your allies, carrying them from the brink of disaster to the verge of victory. Each ally in your aura immediately makes a new saving throw with a +2 status bonus against one ongoing negative effect or condition they are currently affected by, even if the effect would not normally allow a saving throw. That's a pretty darn cool Transcend. We'll see if it makes it past the playtest. Now you can move your spark to various spots. You can move it to your sandals for speed, and then when you get up to the creature, you can move it to your weapon for striking. But you will not always be able to use them because you will kind of have to power these things up, but the movement is actually fairly freely done. And it basically kind of keys around the whole thing about both these classes is that both these classes, switching around apparitions or switching around where your spark is, it gives you a lot of mode change abilities. So you have heroes, but you also have the objects they're associated with. When we go back to the icons, you'll kind of see that ones that are on your body, the body icons, are generally defensive. The worn icons are usually a utility, and the weapon icons are usually offensive. And they will become more powerful as you go along. And they mentioned that, it depends on when you get these, and you will talk with your GM, and you might wake up one morning and find yourself holding a spear, sash, and something on your skin. Another thing you get for an exemplar is epithets, and they become more powerful as you become more powerful. One that they brought up here was Whose Cry is Thunder. And this guy overhead is yours to command as lightning strikes your soul. So any bonus to saving throws you gain from an exemplar ability applies against effects with the electricity trait, and any resistance applies to electricity damage. And you can also choose to apply spirit damage dealt by your exemplar abilities to also manifest as crackling lightning instead. So it's a spirit trait with the electricity trait. And the imminence is when you critically succeed in a strike. Lightning strikes a target within 30 feet for 46 electricity damage with a basic reflex save, and increases to 76 if you are 12th level and 10d6 if you are 17th. And the Transcend action is a 2-action Judgment from Clear Skies with electricity, sonic, and transcendence traits. And this would be if you fire or hurl your weapon, it becomes a line of booming lightning. You make a range strike with your icon against a creature within the first range increment or 30 feet, whichever is further. So you get that. And if the strike is successful, the target and each creature within 15 feet of it must succeed a basic fortitude save against your class DC or take 1d6 electricity damage and 1d6 sonic damage from the Mighty Thunderclap. And the damage increases to 2d6 and 2d6 sonic if you are 12th, and 3d6 sonic and 3d6 electricity if you are 17th. Then the icon automatically returns to your hand. So fully retrievable weapon. There's also other ones they kind of mentioned, like the Horn of the Bones of the Earth, but we really didn't get too far into that. And much later, you get one that speaks to your destiny. So you talk to your GM if you can earn epithets. It would be along the lines of you'd have to come up with a story as like in a great battle, you let out a war cry and you can earn the epitaph. It's something that you can do in the story, and it adds to your story and also how well it fits into the story. Once again, this is the rare class. It's new on the face of Galarion simply because of this War of the Immortals. It's about the same power level as other classes, but it is rare because of the way it is formed. We went and do a couple feats here. Leap the Falls, which is a first level feat. You can reinforce your legs with divine energy and leap the battlefield as powerfully as a salmon clearing a waterfall. But basically your eminence for this is you gain the powerful leap and quick jump skill feats. And Binding Serpent's Celestial Arrow is kind of interesting. It's a feat level 6, and your weapon icon is ranged or can be thrown. And its transcend is if you make a strike with your weapon icon, if it successfully deals damage, the target must succeed at a reflex save against your class DC, or the arrow is going, or whatever you threw is going to transform into a multitude of snakes that coil around the target, immobilizing them until it succeeds an escape attempt against your class DC. A lot of these some have something to do with the Norse, like the coiling serpent, or a lot of have to do with the Pacific Islander. They did kind of have some cultural consultants come in to make sure that they were doing this right, but they did want to emphasize that you're not quite a demiguard, but you're close. From there, we moved on to questions from the stream. And some of the questions from the stream were, we went back and forth between the Animus and the Exemplar. So we're going to start out with the Animus with James, and that was, can you switch out your spirits to get different spells at the beginning, 2 per day, that you choose at the beginning of the day, and the Sage can only get different apparitions and spells from their apparitions outside of combat in a 10-minute rest. Now a Channeler, because they can use that main ability, they can switch them as a single action round by round. You will get more apparitions as you level up, and the ones you choose at the beginning of the day are your choices. What we mean by that is if you are doing the Sage path, you get the one that's your primary. And if you are a Channeler, then you will get more and more, and you can switch them out as you go. And as you go up in level, you'll be able to have more. Does the Exemplar have any healing? And this went back to James, and mostly based on beating up enemies, they're frontliners. One of the icons allows you to heal yourself, and there's one that's called Fish on the Fall's Edge, that if you have an ally that was reduced to 0 hit points, you can bring them back to life, but it's more of a frontline damage class. And back to the Animus, does that mean that at higher levels you could have 8 lore skills at once? Yes. Yes, you will have access to 8 lore skills at once. Lore skills are so specific, but this might not make it past the playtest, but yes, it does mean that. Then what weapons are available to a weapons icon? Now, in general, they won't say that they are down to a specific weapon. We saw the one, and it was for a spear, a bow staff, something along those lines, but they're not going to be down to a specific weapon. So it's kind of more for any sort of martial character. The icons are more like categories than specific weapons. There's one called Fated Shot, that's for ranged weapons. Another one, Gleaming Blade, was any weapon that is a sword or a knife. There was another one for blunt weapons. So you have a lot of choices. Back to the Animus. Are all focus spells sustained for 1 minute? Yes. All the focus spells are 1 action and sustained for up to 1 minute. You'll see why when you start playing them, is what Michael said. Good, solid, fun ways to use your other actions because you're only using 1 action in order to sustain it. Then they asked a more general question, which was, what is your favorite feat? For the Exemplar, James, there was the 7-colored cosmic bridge where you basically have rainbow-colored light that allows you to go wherever the light is, so kind of transport around. And its transcend is an explosion of color light that's kind of inspired by the Bifrost. For the Animus, Michael there are some wandering feats where you can change out feats at certain levels to adapt to the apparition that day. You can also swap out that particular feat to be more generic, or you can swap it out to fit, if you're a channeler, the actual apparition that you have at that particular time. Another one he brought up was Shadows Within Shadows. If you were to be detected, then your attuned apparition will make that opponent re-roll and take the worst roll. So this would be if you were invisible or concealed or hidden or something along those lines. If that person was going to notice you, that apparition could make them re-roll. And then there was one more from James, and it's the Immortality Capstone. And it was called Eternal Guide. So it's once per week, a spirit, if you die, the spirit will magically transport you, soul remains and items, to the settlement that you designate as kind of like your home base or where your soul should be. And you can have a re-inheritor. And after about a week, you will either be reborn or will be born into your re-inheritor. And you can do that once per week. There's no limit. However, if you do this more than once per week, then you will move on to your final reward. Kind of interesting. One of the questions to James was, could you build an Exemplar to be stealth-based? Not that many abilities for them to be stealth-based. They're usually very much in-your-face type of characters. They do have some abilities, a Thief of Moonlight, which snatches the light from the enemy's eyes that makes it not be able to see. All That Shines Belongs to Me, which is as you pass along people, you steal their light and they become blinded. And the more you blind, the longer it lasts. And there's another one called Sunwrecker, which you literally attack the sun and you basically cast darkness on everything around you and it gives you dark vision. So they can be stealth based, but in a very bombastic way. Another question came up about the key ability or attribute scores and hit dice. So for the Animus, it's Wisdom, Divine Caster, and it is Wisdom plus Constitution. Exemplar, it is Constitution and Strength or Dex, as kind of like a frontliner would be. They start with 10 hit die. So another question came up. What was the reason it was chosen for all creatures rather than allies or enemies on some of these effects that these new classes have? And they wanted to allow people to experience the tactical elements. They might rein them in or dial them up depending on how the playtest goes. They wanted to give the most awesome version of these abilities. But if you are going to be more discerning, like having only something apply to allies or to enemies, then they are going to have to be more finely tuned and kind of dialed down. One question came up where, are there any pets, animal companions, or familiars associated with these new classes? No. Exemplar aren't a pet class, nor is Animus. Exemplar is pretty much about themselves, and the Animus is more about the apparitions and the spirit world, so there isn't a lot of physical connection, nor are they planning on having ghost dogs. Humorous question came up, how are each of the classes like Batman? The Animus, as long as Batman knows what he's getting into, he has the tools to handle that situation, and an Animus is like that because of all the apparitions that they can have, so much utility. The Exemplar, even though they can be a little bit sneaky, Batman that is, even though Batman can be a little bit sneaky, you always know he's there. There's always going to be that clap of thunder where he's standing there in the dramatic pose with a light behind him and everybody can see him and knows he's there. You always know that the Exemplars are there and they're very cinematic. Plus, the Exemplar has many tools. Then to sort of close it out, James brought up something having to do with current events, and that was the hurricane in Hawaii. Apparently he grew up there, and so they brought up a couple websites you can go to, which is, I'll go ahead and put them in the comments below, but the Maui Strong Fund for hurricane damage, as well as the Hawaii Community Foundation.org/Maui Strong Fund. And then there were two other little things at the end. There will be, for their partners, there will be a module on Foundry that will allow a full build, as well as a module on Demiplane for a full build of these two new classes. And the second thing is the playtest drops tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific. I said that at the beginning, I say it at the end. 10 a.m. Pacific, so that would be 11 Mountain, 12 Central, 1 Eastern at the paizo.com site. You would also want to grab the remaster package as well because some of the things from there are reused in the playtest. And they also mentioned something about there will be another live at 4 p.m. tomorrow, but I didn't see an announcement about that, nor did they specifically say what that was about. So I guess I'll find out tomorrow at 4 p.m., which is 6 p.m. their time, which is when I'm having my live. We'll see what happens. Now, I hope you enjoyed this little roundup. Tried to keep it as short as I could, but there's a lot of information. But with that being said, I do hope you like this little summary. And if you did, feel free to like, subscribe, or hit that notification bell. But whatever you do, I hope you have a great day and happy adventuring. Thanks.